back. I believe that was just my VPN was being difficult. So it should be fixed now. The stream health looks much better. It's much better being in the green than the red. So we should be okay. The stuff about the microphone still stands, but we should be okay. Anyway, also, I deeply appreciate being summoned with duck emojis, by the way, because if you know me, I'm very ADHD, so I have a tendency to just name the animal that I see in real life. I just do. I shout out the name. I can't help it. I just do that. But it's especially bad with ducks. I'm a general animal lover. Ducks are one of the particular ones that I just love them, okay? So the duck emoji, very apt. Anyway, where did it start lagging? If anybody knows, I will do my best to guess, but I tend to just fly into a panic whenever stream stuff happens and entirely forget where exactly we left off. Just at the start of the scene? Perfect. Around the scene break? Cool. Alrighty. Rolling up the sleeves. And don't worry about being late. We just had to restart the entire stream. You are doing just fine. Alrighty. Oh, no, wait. I need to get my face out of the way. Excuse me. No. Zhao Yunlan, having run into his father after returning to Dragon City the day before, decided to be prompt about calling and setting a time to properly introduce Shen Wei to his parents. And yet, when the agreed-upon time came, he and Shen Wei arrived only to find that Zhao Yunlan's father was once again not home to meet them. Only his mother was there, left in the position of offering apologies and explanations. Shen Wei, of course, was too good-tempered to mind, and for once Zhao Yunlan didn't say a word. They ate a quick meal at the family home and promptly left. When Zhao Yunlan had first come back to the city, his mind had still been fully occupied by the past he'd seen within the Great Divine Tree. He hadn't even registered that something about his dad had been off. What kind of father, knowing full well that his son's gay lover was in the apartment above, would so coldly and haughtily say, as if he were some kind of gentleman, that he's unprepared and that they could make proper plans at a later date? It wasn't as if Shen Wei had been set up on a blind date with him. What was there to prepare for? Clearly, his dad didn't want to see Shen Wei. But why? Was he simply unwilling, or was he too scared? And while it was in the middle of lagging, I brought up that unfortunate truth that with ignorant and bigoted parents, it's like finding out that your kid is gay is one whole thing that you have to grapple with, but then meeting the person that your son is being gay with is an entirely new hurdle that they have to get over. So, disappointed but not surprised at all. Before leaving dinner, Zhao Yunlan went into his old room and got out a small wooden box. Curious, his mother asked, "Didn't you play with that as a kid? Why haven't you thrown it out? What are you taking it out for?" Zhao Yunlan just waved dismissively at her. "Sharing childhood memories with my lover. You're half of an old couple who've long since grown tired of each other. You wouldn't understand." Not that Zhao Yunlan was big for fucking around to begin with, but, I think he stopped. Really, fully, officially. Thanks to his annoying mouth, Zhao Yunlan was chased out of the house. It just so happened to be Valentine's Day. Bury the lead, why don't you? Where the city streets had been all but deserted during the Lunar New Year holidays, they were now bustling with life again. A girl selling flowers passed by Shen Wei and Zhao Yunlan, and she picked up a little something between them from how their shoulders kept bumping into each other. She greeted them with a smile. Hey, cutie, do you want to buy a flower for the cutie next to you? How many do you have? Asked Zhao Yunlan. Enough for me to buy as many as I want? Giggling, she said, as many as you need. I'm selling for a flower shop. If I don't have enough on me, I can go get more for you. In that case, I'll take 5,000 for now. Shenwei's hand clasped over his mouth, cutting Zhao Yunlan off. I'm sorry, Shenwei said, dragging him away. He's just joking. Zhao Yunlan struggled out of his grasp, managing to look back. Hey, I'm in the middle of buying something. What? Miss, wait! Yanking the car door open, Shenwei stuffed him inside, leaving no room for argument. We love a good manhandle. Don't you know anything about romance? Zhao Yunlan exclaimed. There was an ache in Shenwei's stomach. I think you know too much. Zhao Yunlan was an expert when it came to squandering money. When it comes to flowers, ordinary mortals buy 999 of them to symbolize staying together forever. But us? We've been together practically the whole time since Pangu split the sky and earth, so really it's frugal if we just take the saying 5,000 years of Chinese history and buy 5,000 flowers for now. I want to cover the hood and trunk of my car with them to marry you into the family. Has anyone heard the Sabrina Carpenter song Juno? Because I think that's just been playing on a loop in Zhao Yunlan's head from the moment that he met Shenwei. You should really look it up. It's a great song, by the way. It's like my favorite off of that album. Hello. Zhao Yunlan's ridiculousness just entirely knocked me off course. By this point, Shenwei was almost relentlessly subjected to this kind of teasing. The fact that he hadn't yet exploded suggested that he was silently becoming more twisted inside. He removed his glasses and wiped the condensation away, pretending for all he was worth that he didn't care about what Zhao Yunlan was saying. With tremendous effort, he kept up a banner of resistance and spoke with artificial calm. Just yesterday you said you'd take my last name. Okay. Zhao Yunlan? Bad enough. But I can't have Shenwei playing back. I can't have him... No, I can't do that. I can't. You have to draw the line somewhere. I can't physically handle that. The microphone may spot here and there, but as long as it doesn't go fully out, we should be fine. And then if it does, that's just when I have to unplug and replug, which I'll be doing on the break. Anywho. Hello. That stopped Zhao Yunlan in his tracks. Me too. But he, a pervert to the bone, quickly recovered. He made a shameless pretense of stripping off his jacket. Sure, I can work with your last name. Do you want to fuck right here in the car, husband? You don't need to do a thing. Just lie back and enjoy. I'll take good care of you. See? This is... other than just the fact that I wouldn't be able to handle Shenwei, just bandying it back right at him. This is one of the reasons why that I can't. Because all that's going to do is encourage Zhao Yunlan to go farther. So other than the inherent act of Shenwei doing that, already ending me. But then Zhao Yunlan going into the queer stratosphere? Zhao Yunlan, Shenwei fumed. Present. Shenwei practically slouched down below the steering wheel. How can you be so indecent? Smiling radiantly, Zhao Yunlan put a hand on either side of Shenwei's seat. You call that indecent? You have no idea how indecent I can be. Shenwei's embarrassment finally turned into anger. His expression darkened as he grabbed Zhao Yunlan by the collar and pushed him away. The look on his face made Zhao Yunlan shrink back. I'm just joking. How many others have you joked with like this? Shen Wei's voice seemed frozen, his words catching in his throat. His pale lips trembled. Do you know how many times I've almost... The rest of what he'd started to say was likely unfit for polite company. Shen Wei, ever proper, choked it back with difficulty. He looked as though he had swallowed a massive fish bone, or... The joke writes itself. And it was firmly, painfully lodged in his throat all the way down to his chest. Listen. The joke writes itself. I am merely the conduit. I don't know what you want from me. Zhao Yunlan stayed utterly still. It suddenly began to sink in that while he had known Shen Wei for less than a year, Shen Wei had been watching over him for an unimaginable amount of time. This life would last only a few dozen years, but there had been the life before, and the one before that, and the one before that, hundreds of lives, one after another. From ancient times to the present, this man had silently watched over him as he was endlessly buffeted by the cycle of reincarnation. Again and again, Shen Wei had borne witness as Zhao Yunlan had been born, aged, suffered illness, and ultimately died. He had seen every love and every hatred Zhao Yunlan had ever known, none of it to do with him whatsoever, as if he was watching it all play out on screen. Looking at it from that perspective, Zhao Yunlan was suddenly unable to breathe. Shen Wei started the car without another word. We got some perspective. Zhao Yunlan suffered in silence for a while before he had to find something to do. So he opened the little box he had retrieved from his family home, which was full of the sort of junk kids like to collect. He took out a small radio-like thing, then pulled a few screwdrivers of varying sizes from the toolbox he always kept in the car, and started tinkering. His fingers were unusually nimble. It only took a moment's observation to determine that he had been one of those kids who secretly messed around with a lot of wires and caused fire hazards at school. Clearly, if it weren't for the fact that he was clumsy and liked buying new and shiny things, having a partner like him would probably mean never having a brand new appliance in the house. The fire that had erupted in Shen Wei's heart died as quickly as it had arisen, giving way to regret. Where others put up a facade around outsiders, then relaxed and revealed their true selves with an intimate partner, Shen Wei was the polar opposite. He was accustomed to firmly locking himself down in front of Zhao Yunlan, terrified of his true nature being even slightly perceived. Even now that they had bared themselves wholly to each other, Shen Wei sometimes still had no idea how to speak to Zhao Yunlan. How could he, when he always felt so unbearably filthy and unworthy? Well, ow. 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 That was mean. That was unkind. Zhao Yunlan silently kept himself busy with his tools, and finally Shen Wei couldn't keep from sneaking a glance at him while at a red light. Eventually Shen Wei asked, very lightly and cautiously, "What are you doing?" Going along with Shen Wei's attempt to move past their argument, Zhao Yunlan responded as if he'd completely forgotten about it. With more excitement than he actually felt, he said, "This is a tracker I made when I was younger. It uses a wireless radio's signal receiver. Hold on, I just need to fix this loose connection and put in a battery." With a beep, the tiny screen, less than 5 centimeters across, came to life. A tiny, blurry dot appeared. The display was so dim that Zhao Yunlan had to cup it with both hands and lean down over it to see clearly. He adjusted the frequency slowly, then adjusted the placement of the dot and compared it to the hand-carved scale beside the screen. The old man isn't far. He's obviously hiding from me. Let's turn back." Shen Wei didn't know what was going on, but he still made a U-turn at the intersection as instructed. Zhao Yunlan kept his head down over the little screen and gave directions. Although Shen Wei probably couldn't have explained the concept of a radio to save his life, he still did his best to keep up the conversation. "What are we tracking?" "My dad. I installed the signal in his phone. Even after all these years, he's still using the same one," Zhao Yunlan said. "I was still in middle school, so my technical skills weren't the best. The craftsmanship's kind of shoddy, so sometimes the voltage jumps, and it takes ages to adjust the frequency. It can also only pick up the signal at fairly close range." Shenwei reflexively put a hand to his own pocket, thinking of the phone he never touched. He sometimes even put the wrong side of his face when answering a call. If anyone ever tampered with it, he would have absolutely no way of knowing. Zhao Yunlan noticed, of course. He crossed his legs and lit a cigarette leisurely. Don't worry, as long as you don't go find yourself a pretty boy to cheat with, I won't put anything on you. Shenwei shot him a tremendously vexed look. Left turn here. Yeah, that tea house ahead. I see my old man's car. Zhao Yunlan's voice was light and easy, but the darkness in his expression told a completely different story. Someone has the gall to pretend they're my dad. I need to get to the bottom of it today. Before the car even came to a stop, complete stop, Zhao Yunlan had unbuckled his seatbelt and jumped out, running up to the second floor with the ease of familiarity. Shenwei locked the car and followed half a beat behind. He didn't seem to be in much of a hurry. In fact, when he reached the bottom of the stairs, he took the time to nod at a waitress, maybe 20 years old, who was carrying some tea sets. For some reason, her hands shook at the sight of him. A teapot fell to the floor and shattered. The man who wasn't Zhao Yunlan's father sat with his back to the doorway. At the sound of the teapot breaking, he turned around. Behind his glasses, his gaze was sharp, calm, and strangely far off. It seemed somehow ancient and completely at odds with Zhao Yunlan's dad's normal vigor. Zhao Yunlan paused on the threshold, then strode into the room and shooed away the waiter, who was in the middle of a tea ceremony. He sat in front of his father and got straight to the point. You're not my dad. Who are you? The man didn't respond. He kept his eyes on the stairway, face solemn as Shenwei approached. When their gazes met, the air nearly crackled. Shenwei nodded with utmost courtesy. Uncle? The line on the man's face tightened. Age made his smile line seem even deeper. Voice steady, he replied, I wouldn't dare presume. Shenwei's answering smile was so light as to be non-existent. Rather than taking a seat at the tea table, he sat in one of the spare chairs that were a few steps off to the side. He washed a new cup for himself, brewed the tea, and poured, going through the motions with the smoothness of passing clouds or flowing water. He kept his eyes lowered, sending a clear signal that he wasn't going to butt into the conversation. I wasn't in my right mind that day, Zhao Yunlan said. Otherwise, I would have taken one look at your eyes and realized you were a fake. My dad's driven by sheer ambition. His only goals are to be promoted and make more money. He puts on a show of being a refined gentleman, but it's completely obvious that he loves nothing more than authority and worldly prosperity. He's not remotely capable of the kind of serene expression I've seen you wear. I've called you Dad a few times, but that won't be happening again. Now, where is he? I was wondering how we were going to do this, or when, or if at all. The man glanced at Shenwei, humming as he sipped his tea. Sir, I'm trying to be nice here before resorting to force, considering that you might be connected to Shennong, one of the three sovereigns. There was a limit to Zhao Yunlan's patience. Light gleamed in his hands as his speech quickened. The soul-guarding whip flashed in and out of view between his palms. Don't test me. If I need to protect my family, my politeness goes out the window. What little politeness he has. Your father is fine, the man said, finally breaking his silence. I just come out and borrow his body occasionally, and I make sure he remembers the important things afterward. I've never caused him any problems. Don't worry. What are you then? Don't tell me you're Shennong himself. No, I'm no one so mighty. His dad smiled. I'm nothing but a stone mortar left behind by Shennong. During the battle of the creation of gods, I hitched a ride. Through sheer fortune, I managed to successfully cultivate a consciousness. I've done many things to offend Kunlun Jun in the past, but I truly had no choice. My apologies. So what are you doing in my dad's body? Did you forge the memories I saw in the great divine tree? The man's brows tightened. Oh? He asked slowly. I'm not some edgelord, and I'm not the Monkey King who turned the heavenly palace upside down. Zhao Yunlun drank the high-quality tea in one gulp as if it were water. Sure, I can be a little arrogant, but most of the time I'm pretty easygoing. If something drove me to rebel, it would have to be something as vast as the sky, something that filled me with the fury of the earth. But those things I saw in there, those memories, I didn't relate to them at all. There's no way that was me. Besides, Kunlun was charged with all the mountains and rivers between the earth and the sky. He was the protector of every living spirit within those mountains. I've basically been an animal rights activist in all my lives. There's no way I'd ever blind a divine dragon for no reason. His dad glanced at Shen Wei and nodded in agreement. That makes sense. Zhao Yunlan's gaze iced over. I haven't yet asked why you used the tree to mislead me. There was a long sigh. Perhaps when Kunlunjun can see through time, it will... Cut the crap, Zhao Yunlan snapped, interrupting. Speak plainly before I run out of patience. Don't piss me off. I don't care whose stupid bull you are. That unfamiliar gaze skimmed over him and landed on Shen Wei, who was idly flipping through a magazine. Then his father's body shuddered violently, eyes going blank. A moment later, different eyes looked back at him, and the man's aura had completely changed. It was Zhao Yunlan's dad, having just undergone a complete transformation, who was rubbing his own temples and looking back at him, brow furrowed. What were you saying just now? He asked, confused. Sorry, I've been a little tired lately. I spaced out and missed what you said. Zhao Yunlan immediately underwent his own transformation, turning from a threatening crime lord to a juvenile delinquent sitting behind bars. He wilted and said humbly, Dad? His dad's forehead creased. That expression was far too familiar. To Zhao Yunlan, it plainly said, if you have something to say, spit it out. If you have to fart, get it over with. You're my son, so I'll give you 1 minute to explain yourself. I'm tired and don't want to hear any bullshit. Under such dire circumstances, he could only drag Shen Wei into it as his shield. It's just that we made plans and you weren't home when we arrived. I noticed your car here, so I brought him over for you to see. Something came up, his dad mumbled. I'm here to see a friend. His gaze shifted uncomfortably to Shen Wei. There was a long silence while he assessed Shen Wei, but he ultimately found nothing to complain about. In the end, he had no choice but to offer a stiff, dry greeting. I wasn't hospitable enough today. Please don't take it at heart, Shen Losha. When dealing with anyone but Zhao Yunlan, Shen Wei was entirely comfortable, navigating social interactions with ease. He offered an appropriate response. Zhao Yunlan took the chance to pull out a god-banishing talisman and secretly folded it into a triangle behind his back. He pushed it toward his dad. Also, I was at a temple a few days ago, and I got you a blessed protective talisman. Don't open it, just keep it with you. With no sign of suspicion, his dad accepted the talisman, and absolutely nothing happened. Zhao Yunlan's brow furrowed. Had the stupid bowl run off, or was it so strong that even such a powerful talisman had no effect? This is where we end the chapter. I guess if you wanted to be really cruel about it, sure. Oh, thank you, Blue Tune-Ups. I will follow that advice. So, we are on page 33 for chapter 3, but this is where we will take our break. Running a little late thanks to technical difficulties. But we shall return in just a second for chapter 3. This is your chance to go grab something to eat, go run around, do jumping jacks, stretch, find a cat somewhere. And we'll return in just a second. Hello. Hello. Thank you. When you hit the mute button and then it still doesn't unmute, that's a particular kind of betrayal. Is there still the clicking? It doesn't look like there should be. It looked like it should be all right. Cool. All right. In the end, Zhao Yunlan's one shot at evicting the stupid immortal bull from his father's body hadn't worked, and he was left face to face with his actual dad and the full weight of paternal authority. His father, unsurprisingly, was uncomfortable with Shenwei's presence, and while the old man might have been able to endure some brief discomfort, it wasn't long before it had to become someone else's problem. Shenwei, an outsider, was spared. Zhao Yunlan, the poor son, was not. The scolding that resulted dealt a devastating blow to Zhao Yunlan's ego, especially with Shenwei there to witness it. Back in the car, he muttered, "Other people get possessed by gorgeous fox demons, but he only managed to attract some stupid bull. I'd bet the old man belonged to the beggars' gang in a previous life, but he still has the gall to chew me out. Beggars' gang comes with a footnote." The Beggars Gang is a large grassroots organization made up of beggars. It is common across many wuxia settings and noted for being a large, powerful group with an excellent information gathering network. Its members traditionally carried bowls to collect coins when they begged on the streets. Ah, that makes sense. "Don't worry," Shenwei said comfortingly. "Shenong's entire lineage has always felt sympathy for humans. Doing anything to hurt mortals would be very out of character. Besides, didn't you put a tracker on him? I'll help you keep an eye on him too." Zhao Yunlan laughed, mildly embarrassed. "I can't ask you to do that. You haven't even married into the family yet, and your stupid father-in-law is already causing trouble for you." It was as if he remembered only the carrot, not the stick. Apparently forgetting about Shenwei's earlier anger, he went straight back to flirting. After all, it was Valentine's Day, the perfect time to go see a movie with Shenwei. But instead, he dozed off right there in the car. The heat might have been turned up too high, making him unwittingly fall asleep. But even as he drifted into slumber, Zhao Yunlan was confused. He hadn't been that busy recently. Why was he so tired? Maybe there was some truth to that common saying. One feels drowsy in the spring, feels tired in the fall, takes naps in the summer, and can never get enough sleep in the 3 months of winter. But the sleep he fell into was restless, full of one disjointed dream after another. Someone seemed to be muttering in his ear over and over, "You can't let go of eternity. You're unable to see through right and wrong. You can't differentiate between good and evil. And you don't understand life and death." After all those repetitions, Zhao Yunlan couldn't help wondering, what exactly are life and death? The noise in his ears only intensified, growing from a mere clamor to a cacophony. Zhao Yunlan knew he was dreaming, but the knowledge didn't free him. He remained ensnared in the dream, as if he'd fallen into a bog that was swallowing him up. The more he struggled, the less he could breathe. Then a bowl that smelled of something raw was pressed to his lips. Ignoring his struggles, the person holding it pried his mouth open and forced him to take the medicine. Zhao Yunlan resisted instinctively, trying to push the stuff back out of his mouth with his tongue. The person seemed to sigh. Then hands cradled his head and soft lips pressed against his. A familiar scent momentarily quieted Zhao Yunlan's thoughts of protest, and the other person seized their chance to make him swallow the medicine. I think they just did what I think they just did is what I think. Zhao Yunlan's eyes flew open and he started coughing and found himself already home in bed. Dazed, he watched as Shenwei set down the bowl and brought him a cup of tea that was at the perfect temperature. Shenwei ducked his head and touched their foreheads together. "Here," he said, "drink this and rinse your mouth." Zhao Yunlan accepted the tea. His heavy lashes were lowered and a trace of cold sweat from his nightmare still beaded his forehead. In a single gulp, he drank the tea to the last drop before asking hoarsely, "Did I catch a cold? Why am I getting sick so easily lately?" There was a curious pause before Shenwei replied, "It's nothing. Your time within the great divine tree took too much of your energy." "Oh." After a long look, Zhao Yunlan continued, deliberately drawing out each word. "I thought, maybe." Shenwei's spine stiffened, only for him to hear the dumbass conclude with a bit of a lilting whine, "I was carrying your child." Juno enters the chat again? Thanks, Sabrina. Shenwei didn't hurl the medicine bowl and teacup to the floor, but it was a close call. Crimson-faced, he stalked off, arms swinging in angry unison with his strides. Zhao Yunlan had himself a good laugh. But when he took out his phone to check the time, he found an email from Wang Zheng, a new case for the Special Investigations Department. There was a tourist town in a prefectural-level suburb about 200 kilometers from Dragon City that advertised itself as the perfect spot for rest and recuperation. The town had a cluster of vacation villas. Someone occupying one of the villas had reportedly gone out to do their morning exercise and found a corpse in the woods outside the neighborhood. The corpse's blue face was contorted with alarm and fright, and its hands were locked around the neck of a black dog. Both the human and dog had long since gone cold. Wang Zheng's email concluded with a professional reminder. "It's almost the 7th day of the first lunar month." Legend had it that the 7th day of the first lunar month was the Day of the Humans, a day upon which, via occult methods known among the common folk, one might borrow years off someone else's life. These so-called borrowed years would be added to your own lifespan, thereby extending it. One belief was that the blood of a black dog was required to link the yin with the yang. The method involved writing down the birth charts of both parties on a piece of paper with that blood, clearly indicating the number of years to be borrowed. Then one would weigh the paper down with incense on all four corners. If the incense smoke rose straight up, undisturbed by any breeze, it meant a passing reaper had accepted the bribe and would turn a blind eye to this. After that, the paper was burned, and the ashes were fed to the borrower to complete the ritual. In older times, such a ritual might have been held when an elder fell ill. A filial child of the family would voluntarily burn the incense to show their willingness to lend their life. But these days, hardly anyone knew of these old customs and traditions, long since dismissed as outdated relics of feudal times. In the modern era, anyone who would attempt such methods was so terrified of dying that they'd hire an amateur to perform a ritual to steal from someone else's life. Any shaman conducting the ritual would be consuming their own merits in exchange for money, and if the ritual was unsuccessful, the shaman might suffer backlash and bear the consequences on their greedy employer's behalf. As a result, on the 7th day of the first lunar month each year, it wasn't unusual to find someone dead beside a black dog. It was certainly nothing new to the Special Investigations Department. Zhao Yunlan forwarded the email to everyone in the Criminal Investigation Unit with instructions for someone to look into it when they were free. Before he even finished typing out the message, Zhao Yunlan's eyelids felt practically glued together. He managed to cling to consciousness long enough to hit send, then collapsed back onto the bed, falling asleep at the speed of losing consciousness. He was out cold before he could count even a single sheep. The email arrived while Zhuhong was meditating on the roof. She had her long snake tail out, trying to make sure the faint moonlight fell evenly on her entire body. That was the thing about northern cities. Once winter arrived, most nights were foggy or snowy, and clear skies were few and far between. A night when the moon was bright and the stars were sparse was a rare commodity. The email notification roused Zhuhong from her meditative state. But when she opened her eyes, she found a man standing in front of her, facing away. She went utterly still. "Fourth uncle?" Fourth uncle turned and looked down at her. "Back when you failed to pass your tribulation." Tribulation comes with a footnote. The heavenly tribulation is a common aspect of many Shansha stories. Cultivation is a process that goes against the natural order of things, so sometimes the cultivators must pass a trial to ascend to a higher state of cultivation or godhood. This trial usually requires the cultivator to withstand the strike of a divine lightning storm or another natural disaster, and failure can mean death or significant loss of cultivation and or power. Ooh, all right. Back when you failed to pass your tribulation and were injured by the divine lightning, I entrusted you to the Guardian's care. It was my hope that his fierce yang energy would provide you some protection. He's clearly taken good care of you." As he spoke, he gestured with one hand. A small pavilion materialized on the rooftop, buffeted by the northwestern wind. There was a large tea tray of solid wood inside, which held a small stove that was heating a kettle. A little teapot already contained tea leaves. He waved at Juhong. "Come." Juhong's tail shifted into legs. She quickly skimmed Zhao Yunlan's email, then said, a bit hesitantly, "Can we be brief, fourth uncle? The Guardian just notified me of a case." "Just a petty thief who tried and failed to borrow a few years of life," fourth uncle said without looking up. A stronger note of command entered his tone. "Sit down." Fourth uncle was the established leader of the snake tribe. He had a kind face, but a cold heart. It was difficult to ever know what he was thinking. Juhong didn't dare disobey, and she instinctively sat a little straighter. Picking up the kettle, fourth uncle poured the boiling water over the tea leaves. Shrouded within a cloud of steam, he spoke leisurely. "I primarily came to discuss something with you. Dragon City isn't an ideal place for focusing on your cultivation. I'm sure you don't need me to tell you that you haven't made much progress in the last 20 years. With a careful glance toward him, Juhong tentatively asked, "Fourth uncle wants me to move to the countryside?" Playing dumb, was she? Fourth uncle decided to stop beating around the bush. With a light smile, he got to the point. "I meant that you should leave Dragon City." Juhong bit her lip. "But the soul guarding order..." "Entrusting you to the Guardian's care placed you under his command, but you're no convict sentenced to serve your time within the order. The order has no power over you. You could leave right now and the Guardian wouldn't say a word." Juhong was beginning to panic. Her eyes darted around as if a reason to stay would present itself. "What? You don't want to leave him?" Fourth uncle still seemed gentle and amiable. The smile tugging at the corners of his mouth was like that of a temple's Bodhisattva? Shit. I can never remember. Bodhisattva? But his gaze was stern. "If you still consider me your elder, then heed my advice and come with me immediately. Besides, if you really had a place in his heart, I wouldn't be here acting like an annoying stick prying you two lovebirds apart. Do you really not know how the Guardian feels about you?" There was nothing Juhong could say. Fourth uncle wrapped his fingers lightly on the edge of the table. "You've always been a smart kid. I don't need to spell out everything for you. You can figure it out." Juhong's poor phone hadn't been built to withstand a female Yao's anxious grip. There was a crunch as the back plate popped off and a spiderweb crack spread across the screen. Fourth uncle pretended not to notice. He sat and sipped his tea, carefree and leisurely, not hurrying her. After a while, Juhong spoke again. "I'll bid him farewell in person after I wrap up this last case for him," she said quietly. "Is that okay?" Well aware of the principle of not taking things too far, fourth uncle gave her an understanding nod. A beginning and an ending, as it should be. He then pulled out a small box and opened it to reveal a brilliant iridescent pearl. "Here, take this water dragon pearl. If someone keeps it on their person, it turns misfortune to fortune and wards off water and fire. When you say your farewells to the Guardian, pass this along for him for me. He's taken care of you for many years, and our tribe is deeply grateful. This little thing really isn't enough to pay our respects." Juhong accepted the box, but before she could thank him, fourth uncle's silhouette flashed, and he disappeared. The moon was just right, but with her heart now in such disarray, she was no longer in the mood for meditation. She looked down, plucked the SIM card out of the remains of her phone, and disappeared into the night. That's a scene break. Zhao Yunlan received Juhong's text at midnight. "Lin Jing and I are heading over," it said. "Remember to pay us double for overtime." Shen Wei was a very light sleeper, so much so that Zhao Yunlan sometimes wasn't quite sure he could fall asleep at all. As a result, ever since Shen Wei had moved in, Zhao Yunlan had started setting his phone to vibrate at night and kept it under his pillow to avoid waking Shen Wei. But this time he'd fallen asleep too quickly to tuck his phone away and was sleeping with it still in his hand. When the phone vibrated in his palm, it silently jarred him awake. His first instinct wasn't to look at the text. Instead, he held his breath and turned over to see if it had woken Shen Wei up too. That's entirely too domestic. The other side of the bed was empty and already cold to the touch. It was impossible to say how long Shen Wei had been gone. Startled, Zhao Yunlan sat up and saw light coming from the kitchen. He groped around the floor for his slippers, but when he couldn't find whatever corner they'd been kicked into, he headed for the kitchen barefoot. Shen Wei was facing away, doing something with his hands as Zhao Yunlan entered. A little clay pot bubbled on the stove. The faint smell of a medicinal decoction wafted from the pot, as if Shen Wei was preparing some grand dish that needed to be stewed overnight. Zhao Yunlan rubbed his eyes and walked over, rolling up his sleeves. "What are you making? I'll help." His voice startled Shen Wei, who dropped what he'd been holding. What clattered to the floor was a knife, dripping enough blood that the clean white cabinets were spattered when it landed. Zhao Yunlan broke off mid-sentence, pupils constricting. In an instant, all trace of sleepiness was gone. Shen Wei had been cutting into his own chest. Shen Wei's face was white as a sheet. For a few seconds, one could have heard a pin drop in the silence. Grabbing Shen Wei by the shoulder, Zhao Yunlan spun him around and tore his shirt open. The stab wound on his pale chest had already started to heal, but the surrounding skin and his pajamas bore telltale bloodstains. Zhao Yunlan felt as if he were the one who'd been sliced open. Every tiny movement pained him. He carefully extended a finger, tracing it over Shen Wei's now unmarred chest. After a small eternity, he hoarsely asked, "What's going on?" When Shen Wei said nothing, Zhao Yunlan took hold of his collar. "I'm asking you what's going on. Talk!" Shen Wei's lower back slammed heavily into the cutting board. Zhao Yunlan was genuinely furious. He suddenly understood how Shen Wei had felt back at the hospital when he'd raised his hand and nearly struck Zhao Yunlan after he used the Ghost Army summons. The anger lodged in his throat was suffocating. Alright. We're gonna play it like that, huh? This is how we're gonna do it for volume 3, huh? This is what we're doing. This is the deal. This is the art vibe for volume 3. Tight. I am free. I can barely look at that. Jesus. Okay. Clicking away from my frickin' face. What have you been making me drink? Shen Wei, fucking look at me when you speak. Long ago, your left soul fire went missing, and your heart's blood became the soul-guarding lamp's wick, Shen Wei responded, very low. Your spirit was already weak. Your 3 souls were unstable. And for all that you forcibly elevated me to godhood, the fact remains that I was born from the place of great disrespect. The Gui are filthy and inauspicious. If you spend enough time in my presence, I'll start wearing you down. As I do, you'll become deficient in both chi and blood. Ultimately, I'll burn you out until there's nothing left. Shen Wei dropped his gaze, hiding his ink-black eyes under lashes like crow feathers. Barely audible now, he said. All those thousands of years ago, Shen Nong said that, as a king of the Gui, my life was fated to both begin and end badly. If you insist on protecting me and keeping me at your side, I'll inevitably kill you. So the medicine I've been drinking has your blood in it, the purest blood from the tip of your heart? Zhao Yunlan's lips trembled. That's your way of replenishing my lamp oil? Shen Wei looked at him with a faint, soft smile. Every part of me is dark, down to my very soul. Only the very tip of my heart is clean. And that's where I've kept you, where the blood runs red. I'll gladly use it to protect you. It was Zhao Yunlan's turn to stare at the floor. After a while, he lifted his head and covered his eyes with a hand. If Shen Wei didn't like him and kept him at a distance, Zhao Yunlan could either choose to keep pestering him or choose to back away gracefully. To advance or retreat were both reasonable options. If Shen Wei lied to him, hurt him, or wronged him, Zhao Yunlan had the choice to either forgive him or walk out of his life forever. Once again, it was reasonable to either advance or retreat. But Shen Wei had woven him into his web, and Zhao Yunlan was unable to scold him, curse at him, or hate him, and equally unable to accept his actions. Zhao Yunlan's silence stretched on for a long time. Finally, he grabbed a thick jacket off the large coat rack in the foyer, bundled it around himself, and walked out the door without a backward glance. It turned out there was a kind of love that was like a knife to the heart. That has a footnote. That is from Life and Death Are Wearing Me Out, a novel by Mo Yan. That's the chapter. We're on page 45 for chapter 4. Okay. Having coordinated their plans, Zhu Hong and Lin Jing arrived at 4 Bright Avenue to ask Wang Zheng for an official SID car before the sun rose. They walked in and were greeted by the unexpected sight of their boss, who hadn't been answering his texts, curled up asleep on the sofa. He was wearing pajamas, and an unfamiliar heavy wool coat was draped over him. Daching was crouched in front of the sofa, washing his paws with great satisfaction. A plate full of bones from tiny dried fish sat before him. Zhu Hong turned up the thermostat. "Why is he sleeping here?" she asked quietly. Lin Jing had swelled up over the Lunar New Year, as though inflated like a balloon. He rubbed his chin, which now looked mushy soft, and said, "Something must be up if he's not going home during the holidays. My guess is he's either being forced into an unwanted marriage, or he's been forced into a breakup." Zhao Yunlan looked up at that. He had a tremendous case of bedhead. There were heavy bags under his eyes, and he was clearly enraged at being woken up. "Fuck off," he snarled, his sinister gaze cutting right through Lin Jing. Lin Jing only sighed. Who on earth could handle a man like our boss? "Director Zhao, if your hard-working wife made you breakfast and woke you to eat, would you talk to her that way too?" The fake monk just had to mention the one subject Zhao Yunlan least wanted to discuss. Zhao Yunlan reached up and grabbed a tiny bonsai from the cabinet next to him, then hurled it at Lin Jing. There was a loud smash as it hit the wall. Daching and Zhu Hong exchanged glances at this outburst. Even Lin Jing was momentarily frozen in place. But it was his careless talk that had caused the trouble, so he had no choice but to find a broom and sweep up the mess. "Amitabha," he murmured. "May the pieces bring peace." Daching sprang up onto the back of the sofa. "Hey, are you okay?" Zhao Yunlan flung himself back down and buried half of his face in the coat, which actually belonged to Shen Wei. He'd left in such a rush that he'd been halfway to the office before he realized he'd grabbed the wrong one. Traces of the owner's lovely, clean scent still lingered on the collar, but... "I'm fine," Zhao Yunlan muttered. "Lin Jing, don't worry about that. I'll sweep it up later. I didn't mean to take everything out on you. Just let me lie here for a bit, and you guys can carry on with whatever you're supposed to be doing." Daching's whiskers quivered. Zhao Yunlan reached a hand out from the coat and tousled the fur on Daching's head, then gave the fat cat's rump a somewhat perfunctory pat. "When you have time, go find out exactly where that Record of Ancient Secrets book came from." "Ordering your cat grandpa around," Daching groused. "Where's my red envelope? Where's my lucky money?" Eyes closed, Zhao Yunlan dug through Shen Wei's coat pocket. He took out a handful of small bills, grabbed hold of the cat's neck to tuck the money under his collar, and waved him off as if sending a beggar on his way. So shameless. Even if you printed off your own mountain of lucky money, there'd never be enough to do any good for someone your age. Hurry up and leave. Lucky money has a footnote. Lucky money, literally keep the age down money. Sounds like keep the evil away money. Da Ching snarled and made to sharpen his claws on the coat, but Zhao Yunlan managed to reach out and block him just in time. Da Ching retracted his claws the moment they touched warm human skin, but they still left white marks on Zhao Yunlan's arm. What kind of stupid coat couldn't even be used for sharpening his claws? After a dumbfounded moment, Da Ching ran off in a huff. He felt as though Zhao Yunlan, the huge asshole, was tossing money at him the way one drops it into the fare box on a bus. There were countless rules and traditions surrounding the Lunar New Year, and since most of the SID staff weren't human, they all had their own ways of spending the holiday. As a result, their break usually lasted until at least the 15th day of the Lunar New Year, which meant that Forbright Avenue was empty and quiet for a change. Thanks to Shenwei, Zhao Yunlan's chest ached with the weight of his frustrations, so he opted to just sink back into his dreams and sleep some more. It was late morning when he woke in the silent office. Dizzy and disoriented, he got up and froze when he looked down. In his hurry to get out of the apartment, he hadn't even stopped to put on socks, only noticing once he was outside that he was only wearing leather shoes and it was a little cold. But here were the short boots he normally wore, set tidily by the sofa with a pair of thick knit socks stuffed into them. A full set of ironed clothes lay on the arm of the sofa, with underwear tucked into the innermost layer. His phone, wallet, and keys were on top of the clothing. The only thing missing was a coat of his own. The obvious conclusion was that Shenwei wanted Zhao Yunlan to keep his. A voice spoke up. Shen Lusha brought all that over for you. I wanted to wake you, but he didn't let me. Zhao Yunlan pinched the bridge of his nose. Zhu Hong was seated at her desk, idly surfing the web to kill time. Where is he? He asked. He left. Zhao Yunlan's voice was hoarse when he spoke again. Where did he go? What else did he say? He said, It's cold out, so you should go straight home after work. I'll be at my own place, so don't worry about running into me. Zhu Hong parroted the message precisely. Then he left. I guess he went home. Why did you guys decide to get in a fight during the New Year? Zhao Yunlan didn't reply. He knew exactly what Shenwei meant by his own place, and it wasn't Shenwei's apartment like Zhu Hong assumed. But even the thought of it made him feel like his heart was being run through with knives. It wasn't something he could discuss with anyone else, though. A stiff nod was the only answer he could give. He pulled on his socks and grabbed the clothing, then went to the bathroom to get changed. He washed up hurriedly, then rested his palms on the edges of the sink. After staring down at the snow-white ceramic for a while, he plunged his face into the frigid water. For a time, he didn't dare think of Shenwei. He'd never cared for anyone like this before, with such intensity that just thinking of the other person hurt, as if his heart had been gouged out. Could we stop making references to gouging out hearts, given the previous fucking scene? Ah! All of a sudden, we're stabbing chests. Our hearts are coming out. They're being gouged. They're being ripped. They're being cut. They're being torn. Can we... I'm already having enough of a difficult time. Okay? Your recurring imagery that has been strategically planted for maximum emotional effect is working. You can cut it out now. I just did it to myself. God. Eventually, he'd been gone so long that Zhu Hong started to get worried. She came and knocked on the door. Director Zhao, are you all right? Zhao Yunlan made some sound of acknowledgement. Looking at his reflection, he wiped the water off his face and shaved off the stubble. He carefully cleaned himself up so that he looked human again, then straightened up and walked out. Even if his heart ached until it burned, what would that solve? Nothing. Another heart reference. I'm going... He ordered breakfast at the cafeteria and silently sat down to eat. It wasn't until his stomach was full that some warmth came back to his frozen, numb limbs. Finally, he gave Ju-hong a confused look. Why did you come to the office? The original plan was to take the train and go check out the black dog and the corpse with Lin Jing today. So why didn't you go? I was a little worried about you, so I told him to go on his own. Zhao Yunlan wiped his mouth, stood, and cleared away his tray. What's there to worry about? He asked calmly. If you've got nothing to do, you can go home. Ju-hong didn't say anything or show any sign of leaving. When Zhao Yunlan strolled back to his office and turned on his computer as he would on any other day, Ju-hong followed him in. Why are you still following me? What exactly is wrong? She countered. Zhao Yunlan took a pack of cigarettes and a lighter from his drawer. Nothing's wrong, he said lightly. Ju-hong wasn't having any of it. Oh, then why did you spend the night sleeping here instead of at home? Oh, that. Zhao Yunlan sucked in a mouthful of white smoke, not letting even a wisp escape. We just had a small argument last night. Bullshit, Ju-hong retorted, arching a brow. Don't act like we're all blind. You treat that Shen guy like a treasure. If you two had some small fight over nothing, you would have run back to him ages ago. You'd be kneeling on a motherboard and writing a 10,000-word apology letter, not here feeding me your crap. Zhao Yunlan had nothing to say to that. Did he mistreat you? As Ju-hong spoke, her eyes shone with terrifying brightness, as if a nod from Zhao Yunlan would make her hunt Shen Wei down and swallow him whole. Zhao Yunlan flicked ashes from his cigarette. Lately, you've been gossiping more and more. Early menopause or something? Sad and angry, Ju-hong said, What does it matter? Either way, the person I like doesn't like me back. Zhao Yunlan knew exactly what she was getting at, but what could he say? He decided to take the coward's way out. He found a briefcase, stuffed his wallet and phone inside, and went to leave without even turning off his computer. Ju-hong, dead set on not letting him go, was right on his heels. Where are you going? I've got an appointment with a higher-up at the ministry. He glanced over at Ju-hong. Don't follow me. Ignoring him, she followed him out the front door, and when he unlocked his car, she immediately claimed the passenger seat and fastened her seatbelt. I'm going too, she said, resolute. Utterly exhausted, Zhao Yunlan sighed. Can you please show me some mercy, ma'am? Ju-hong looked away and ignored him. They faced off for what seemed like an eternity before Zhao Yunlan crumbled. Reining in his temper as best he could, he put out his cigarette and got in. He was silent the entire ride. Ju-hong snuck a few glances at him, but only saw his handsome, cold profile. Gradually, she started to fidget and resorted to small talk. Which higher-up are you meeting? Xiaoguo's second uncle, Zhao Yunlan said. Speaking of which, it's fine if I bring you along. Afterward, I want you to find out who meddled and got Go Changcheng transferred to our department. Meddled? She asked, confused. Someone meddled with Xiaoguo? Why? How could he benefit anyone? Zhao Yunlan didn't reply. The truth was he had his suspicions that the bull possessing his dad had used his dad to do it. Oh! This would make sense! I feel silly. As for why, though, it was a total mystery. Go Changcheng was a true mortal. Looking back through his family tree, there hadn't been a single cultivator in 8 generations. Sure, he had an abnormally high number of merits, but what else was special about him? If it was at all possible, Zhao Yunlan wanted to regain Kunlun Jun's powers and true memories. Failing that, he at least wanted to know what was up with all these lies among truths, shrouded in layers of mystery, and learn what had motivated it all. He couldn't act rashly without seeing the full picture. Shen Wei. The name alone overwhelmed Zhao Yunlan with worry. It was as though a flame was burning in his heart, steadily eating away at his energy. But he had to hold it in. And not only that, he had to seem outwardly peaceful while he was at it, as if he had everything under control. Somebody is getting a taste of what it's been like to be Shen Wei for the past thousands of years. He'd noticed at times that if he was just sitting there and no one else was around, his brow would furrow subconsciously. The same scene kept unfolding in his mind, no matter where he was or what he was doing. In some cold, dreary place without a single beam of light or sign of life, Shenwei was half swallowed by an endless darkness. Helpless to do anything but look up, Shenwei desperately strained to glimpse the emerald seas and azure skies, but they were beyond him. His vision couldn't pierce the unending, absolute blackness. Sooner or later, inevitably succumbing to disappointment and despair, Shenwei was slowly sucked away into the darkness. Zhao Yunlan jolted awake as someone abruptly nudged him. He found his heart racing and his forehead beaded with sweat. Zhu Hong was the one who had nudged him. Expressionless and a little unhappy, she said, "We're here." He sat stock still for a moment before realizing he had been dreaming. He'd had a few drinks with Go Cheng Chung's second uncle, and Zhu Hong had driven them back. He didn't know when he'd nodded off. Zhu Hong sat motionless. "What were you dreaming about? What made you cry out for Shenwei so heart-wrenchingly?" Having already lost control, Zhao Yunlan didn't want to betray anything else. He pretended not to hear. "Yunlan," she said suddenly, and he waited, watching as she pulled a little box from her pocket. She opened it and took out the water dragon pearl, which she had strung on a red string and finished with a lucky knot. "My fourth uncle asked me to bring you this. He said it's to thank you for all the years you've assisted the snake tribe, and soon, I'll probably have to leave with him." "Leave?" Zhao Yunlan was taken aback. "Leave to go where?" "Oh, probably back to the tribe." Zhu Hong forced a smile. When Zhao Yunlan didn't reach out for the pearl, she hung it around his wrist. "It's really from my fourth uncle, not me. Water dragon pearls are sacred within my tribe. Where would I get the authority to give it away? It offers protection from water and fire, and it will keep you safe." She swallowed. If there's anything else you need me to do, now's the time. There's not much I can do for you anymore." Zhao Yunlan was silent for a while. Finally, he nodded. "It's for the best. Dragon City is too noisy. It's not a suitable place for you Yao to cultivate. Going back to your tribe isn't a bad idea. Once you're there, stay away from crowds and people. You'll get into less trouble that way. Your fourth uncle is powerful, so you should learn from him. You have such a bright future ahead of you. Who knows, maybe you'll be the snake tribe's next chief." He spoke as if he was getting his affairs in order before death, so calmly that it made her heart ache. Zhu Hong found her real feelings tumbling out of her mouth. "Director Zhao, just give me the word. One word and I'll sever all ties with my tribe and follow you to the end, through hell or high water." It was as if she'd handed her whole life over on a silver platter, leaving her scared of Zhao Yunlan's response, but also anticipating it. However, a declaration of love was never guaranteed reciprocation. In the end, Zhao Yunlan still wouldn't meet her eyes. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You and I have known each other for years, and we don't have any grudges against each other. Why can't I wish you well? As long as you're doing well, that's what matters to me." The light in Zhu Hong's eyes flickered out. Zhao Yunlan had already gotten out of the car. Ow! That's the end of the chapter. Ow. Nobody's happy at the end of this stream. Nobody. We are unhappy in every sense. Damn, that was the end of the chapter. I don't know if that was the end of the chapter. We're on page 55 for chapter 5. But it is 5:01. And I have to go. And this is a good place to start. I don't want to get into a chapter and then just have to stop in 5 minutes. So, wait, where'd the bookmark go? Oh, on that lovely heartbreaking note, we're going to take the weekend to walk that off, along with everything else. Whew. Whew. Damn. Okay. So, we read gay things on streams Tuesdays and Thursdays, 3 to 5 p.m. We're finishing up Volume 3 over the next couple of weeks, maybe a couple of weeks and some change. And then, because I didn't want to start the next Urha, I didn't want to start the next Urha for 2 sessions and then have to go on my mandatory vacation for most of December this year, as the way things shake out with my schedule and the wife's schedule. So when we finish volume 3 here in a few weeks, that'll be it for the reading streams until I think the 2nd week of January. I'd have to double check. But when we come back in the new year, we'll be picking up our volume 3. All right. Whew. I'm gonna go. I don't know. That was rough. That whole we were doing fine, more or less, with the just intensely homosexual love that was happening, and now nobody's happy. So I don't know. I'm gonna go watch cat videos and talk to the wife. I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful, lovely weekend. Please take care of yourselves, and I will see you on Tuesday for more Volume 3 of Guardian. Alrighty? So sorry for all the technical difficulties, and I'll see you in a few days.